Dave, what can you be getting on with in the garden or the allotment over the next couple of weeks to come?
You'll pardon my smiling expression there. Your listeners can't see it, but talking about sort of what I've been doing over the next week or so, with weather like we've been having for the last weekend, and everybody's in the same boat, obviously. Fortunately, I managed to dig quite a bit of my plot before the rain came, so I was lucky with that. That was concerned. But it's actually a very busy time of the year, and I've got a lot of exclamation marks to go with that. Really quite busy indeed. And the tasks are very varied. Planning, cleaning up, protecting, pruning, overall neatness and general tidying up of plot and or your gardens. On things like vegetables, you need to tidy around the dead leaves, the yellowing and the dead leaves that you've got on brassicas and cabbages, to keep the plot neat and to discourage pests, quite frankly. They're always hiding underneath there. So take that kind of yellowing, decaying stuff away, and they'll scurry away themselves, actually. They don't like the light in the winter, that which we get anyway. Check any stored vegetables or fruit that may be showing signs of rotting. Very important. I tend to go through mine once a week, and if it's even the slightest brown spot or what have you, I either eat the other half or throw that particular piece of vegetable away or fruit away. It's becoming very popular, but there are such things as summer-sown green manures like clover and mustard seed. So you can dig those in now so that they can start to break down in the soil and give you ready-made compost and good soil with lots of nutrient in it, lots of nitrogen in it next spring again. Gives plants a head start. Start looking to insulate any prized containers, and I know we were talking about this before. It's not just the plant which could suffer, it's also the plot.
Which you tend to forget about.
You tend to forget about that. Some of these pots are very expensive. Yeah. Nobody wants to come out after a hard frost to find that the water's expanded, the plant's okay, but the pot's gone for a burton and you've got to replace it. So start to insulate any prized containers and susceptible plants against possible frost damage. However, though, our winters are supposed to be getting warmer and wetter in milder parts of the country, so who knows, quite frankly. It's important to keep them sheltered and dry. Winter wet, for instance, kills far more plants than frost will do. Certainly those plants which are in, prized plants which are in pots. Find a place in your greenhouse, or if you don't have a greenhouse, then a sheltered spot in the garden for those tender plants. I'm talking about things like citrus, lemons, for instance, olives, potted tender flowering plants as well. Prune both flowering and fruit bushes once the leaves have fallen and the plants have become dormant. We talk a lot about this evening about dormancy. It's that dormant period when you can do an awful lot to your plants, and they won't necessarily suffer. Start by taking out the disease stuff. It's obvious, a lot of this, it's taking out the disease stuff, the crossing or the congested or the weak or spindly stems, basically, that which you don't frankly need for next year. However, saying that, don't forget to consider the overall shape of the plant when you're cutting back, i.e. it's going to grow back next year. What will it look like? If you tend to prune too hard, you've got to wait for that plant to catch up again to look like what it did last year, if you see what I mean, last season. You can dig up and store dahlias in dry compost in a frost-free spot. That's difficult to say on a Monday evening, actually, frost-free spots. Cut back and tidy your perennials that have died back, and protect them, again, possibly with your leaves, your mulch, if necessary. And as we said before, now's the time to move the established plants if you need to move them. If, for instance, something isn't in that right spot, you didn't like it in that spot, or it didn't like to be in that spot, now's the time to start thinking about moving it by digging it up and removing it.
Dave, do you have any useful tips for us for this time of year?
I think if at all possible, the first tip actually is to say, and the ground conditions allow it, keep up the winter digging, because things should be being turned over on the ground now. If you've got warmer days, carry on digging on the heavy soils. Let the frosts do the work in the winter, but initially you need to start the winter digging up. Don't overdo it. The ground's heavier. Inevitably, the ground is heavier over the winter, so patience is also a virtue during the winter months. It's the world's worst thing for any gardener to be sitting there saying, I could be getting on with that if it wasn't raining or it wasn't snowing or it wasn't hailing. So please let the sun come out so that I can actually carry on with the winter digging. keep your own speed, make it as enjoyable as possible. You'll thank yourself next spring actually for not having a bad back from trying to dig heavy soils. And as we all know, Sheppey is very largely London clay, so it's quite a heavy soil. If you're winter digging, you might also now want to sort of start emptying your compost bins, or the ones which have been sort of composting down over the year. So dig in the well-rotted compost and manures that you should have been collecting or been making over the winter or over the summer. Here's an important point. It's something that a lot of people, perhaps, and sometimes myself included, actually, scrub clean your seed trays and pots. What that does, it helps to eliminate the microscopic pests and the fungal diseases which will be overwintering in your dirty pots and containers. There's nothing worse than putting a nice new seedling into your pot and your nice new compost for it to be infected by something that you haven't a clue that was there in the first place. You can help alleviate that by literally cleaning your pots out, scrubbing them with a disinfectant, something like that. Clean pots, good husbandry. Much more pleasant, I think, is as we all know, December's coming, Christmas is coming, so it's planning your Christmas wish list. And I can't think of having any better Christmas present than a selection, or being given a selection of seeds.
Yep.
Or anything to help with your garden or your allotment. That gives me a great deal of pleasure. Personally, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to get something like that. A very, very quick quip. A friend of mine actually bought me a present a couple of years ago, and I said, "Why is she buying me this basket?" And I shook it. She said, "Don't shake it." And I said, "Why shouldn't I shake it?" She said, "Because." And I thought, why she bought me a bag of sand? When I opened it up, of course, it was the delightful present of lots and lots of seed packets, so I didn't have to buy anything for that year at all. She'd actually asked my wife what the particular seeds that I actually wanted. Gardening books, magazine subscriptions, they're always useful, as are delightful shiny new tools, but how you disguise a fork on Christmas Day, I do not know. Have a good go at it, though. You can't really break it down, can you? It doesn't come screw top or anything like that. So, Christmas wish list, think about that, because we're coming up to that particular time of the season anyway. And as I say, I don't particularly want to be planting onions on Christmas Day. I'd sooner be opening my seed packets and my Christmas present seed packets. There's one other point actually as well. It's something that a lot of people forget. In your gardens, you will have been putting other things like herbs in your gardens as well. Dig up some of your herbs and pot them up as well, and you can place them out of frost. Things like mint. I know mint is very hardy, it's a real thug in the garden, but the nice thing is, again, if you want minted potatoes on Christmas or around the New Year time, there's nothing worse than going out in a howling gale looking for a sprig of mint when you've got it on the windowsill indoors. Those kinds of things, that the more tender herbs, actually, dig some of them up and put them in pots and watch them grow over the winter on your own particular herb garden indoors.